The lesson tonight is going to be a little bit different than normal, but it's getting toward the end of the year. I wanted to take a look back and a look forward, hopefully to be an encouragement for you for next year, for the things we're going to be involved in, and a reminder of the things that we're trying to accomplish and why, and that kind of thing. So the idea really is that I've been excited about next year for a while. I've been making plans for my part of it for 5-6 months now, and I think it's going to go well for at least what I'm trying to do, and I'm hoping that we will all be on the same page and working together, doing some things. This might mean that you're continuing to do the things you're doing. It might mean that you find some new way to help based on talents and opportunities and abilities. And hopefully you'll see a little bit more as we go through it. Can't get into a lot of detail because some things we don't know yet. We can't tell the future, but we can at least plan. And I've learned that over the years that the things that I don't plan for, the goals that I don't set, I never hit them. And I never fail. You know, that's a good thing. If you don't set a goal, you can never fail, but you never really succeed either. I don't like being aimless and wandering around. In fact, it gives me anxiety. I want to know where I'm going. I know at least have a plan. And I remember the first time I did this with the congregation here was 2019, end of 2019. I said, we're going to have a 2020 year. I don't know if you remember this. I was all excited about the theme. I was like, okay, we're going to have 2020 focus. We're going to focus on God, focus on Jesus, focus on the family. And then COVID hit, and everything just went to pot. And all the plans just failed. But you know what? We still had a good year. We adjust. We have a saying that you probably have heard, to write your plans in pencil, right? And I just put mine on a computer because it's easy to erase. But having said that, we also need to look in James chapter 4 because I don't want to come across in a way that's not appropriate. In James chapter 4 and verse 13, he says, "Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit." Now, I'm obviously not talking about that very thing. If we're not going to be trying to make a profit, but it's the same principle is involved. He says, "Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow, for what is your life? It's even a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin." And we certainly don't want to do that. We don't want to sin and have arrogance and boasting, oh, look at the things we're going to accomplish. I don't want to come across that way. I also don't want to come across as in, look at the things we're going to do and how great we are because of the things that we're going to be accomplishing. You know, anything that we do, have done, or will do is all because God's going to be with us. If we accomplish anything, it's going to be because of God's help. And we rely on Him first and foremost. We go to Him in prayer. We spend a lot of time thinking about what we can do to make sure we're pleasing God. I just want to put that out there from the very beginning because this is not done in kind of an arrogant fashion of, oh, look what we're going to accomplish. I take my preaching responsibilities very seriously. I spend a lot of time working on them, thinking ahead, thinking about what we need, and that doesn't mean that I know what I should be saying. But in doing this, I took about 3 days where, 3 or 4 days, where I hid out in a cabin by myself and did nothing but studied the entire book of Revelation. And I wrote down every principle I could see in it. I wrote down everything I could think of that relates to any of the passages that were there, any big principles or small principles or whatever. And I made a stack of them. I put them in separate little pieces of scrap paper, and I divided them up all around the floor. I mean, it was everywhere. And I put them in organization as best that I could and trying to figure out what principles relate to one another and how they could fit together and try to get some kind of a semblance of a way to preach through the book in the entire year, covering all the principles without having to spend all of our time in the book of Revelation, because that's not going to be an appropriate thing for us to do, but we'll spend a lot of time in Revelation. The idea that I came up with that is, you can see there, the theme is is based on warfare, finding our footing. The reason for that is because I'm not I'm not a prophet, but next year just promises to be one of those years. Why do I say that? We got an election coming. You remember what it was last time? You remember all the riots and all the things? And it doesn't matter which side wins. I think this time there's going to be lots of things, lots of problems, up until the point of the election and then even afterward. And I don't know if things happen to turn bad. It could turn bad for us. It's not likely, but it could. One of the questions that I thought of, and this is the reason that I wanted to go through the book of Revelation, is what happens if we're facing persecution of some kind? How can we prepare for that? And that question haunted me for a while. How do you prepare for something you've never experienced, that you don't know what it's going to be like? How can you prepare yourself mentally to face challenges that you may have no idea are coming? And I've said this before, we all believe about ourselves, or at least most of us probably believe about ourselves, that we would die for Christ, we would die for God. Whatever it took, we would make sure that if we were in that situation, we had to make a decision, it was always going to be the right one. But we don't know that until we get into that situation. So how is it that we can prepare for that if we've never done that before? And we can't prepare by creating a false sense of, in sports, you prepare for facing the team that you're facing by running plays and drills based on what you think they're going to do in their defense and offense, that kind of thing. So you're kind of aware. So you put yourself in a situation where you're going to have that experience, and then you figure out how to play it. We can't do that with the kind of things we're talking about here, because if I walked in with a machine gun and pointed it at you and said, you need to renounce Christ, you're going to laugh at me because you're not going to take it serious. You don't think it's funny. And I'm not going to hire someone to come in and fake it. There's no way I'm going to do anything like that. So the only thing that we can do is to look at the Scriptures and see, what did the Bible tell us to do? And the book of Revelation does that tremendously well. It helps us to see principles, at least, we can put in place, things that we can think about so that we can be as prepared as we can be for what we might face. Don't face it, praise the Lord, but we'll be ready anyway, and we'll grow in our as a result of that. So here the way out for this, and the book of Revelation is such an amazing book. I am not by any means going to stand up and explain every passage and explain the details and information about everything. I don't know all the answers, but I do know that there are a lot of things here that we can glean. So I broke it up into 4 quarters, and every month really has its own theme, which I'm not going to get into tonight, but I have the 4 quarters listed. The first one is about the pursuit of God. We're going to spend January, February, March talking about different principles related to the pursuit of God, and each month is going to present itself a different lesson. So for the first Sunday of the month, when we have potluck, I will be explaining the passage, the principle for the month, and what we can do, what we can see in the book of Revelation that teaches us that principle. And the rest of the month, we'll spend time in different parts of the Bible looking at similar ideas and principles that will help us build on the main principle for the month. And we'll do that every month. It'll be a different one. The first quarter will be the pursuit of God. The second quarter will be the developing unwavering conviction under fire. Whether we face persecution or not, we need strength. We need to be encouraged to know what to do. And then we also are going to have talk about the training that comes from God. And God, we all know this. God trains us. He disciplines us. Hebrews chapter 12. And we know that that's what He does and how He operates, but we need to make sure that we see the underlying principles so that we don't miss the lessons. And I've said this many times, and the reason I say it is because I have dealt with this myself a lot. We always learn something from experiences, but that doesn't mean that we learn the right thing from the experiences. So, for example, and I put this kind of in the elders, deacons text group just recently, just thinking out loud. The Friends and Family Day. We all learned something. But we need to put our heads together and think about what we did learn and make sure it was the right lesson to learn. Because I don't know how about you, but I've learned the wrong lesson many times from success and failure. And the only way that we can grow through experience is experience doesn't give you wisdom. Analyzed experiences through prayer and thinking will give you wisdom. It will help you see what can be coming in the future. But too many times we just assume we understand what happened when we may not even know what happened. So we're going to talk about that, how God trains us and helps us in the situations that we're in. And then the last one will be victory in Jesus. And it's not just about going to heaven, but it is going to be about the encouragement that we should have, how we can know we're going to be victorious in Christ, what it is that victory means for us, both in this world and the next one to come. This is my part. And I'm hoping that you will be able to follow along, and I'm hoping that I can make it as practical as I can so that you can participate in these things. I'll show you in a little bit how you can participate even more with this as we go through. That's the idea of the preaching. Incidentally, when I talk about preaching, you know, we have so many passages in the Bible. Acts chapter 20, verse 7 says that the saints came together on the first day of the week, and while Paul was there, he began to preach to them, and he preached until midnight. And that's when, the young man fell out of the window and died. Well, our culture has changed. That was a little bit different situation, too. I'm sure they probably didn't preach for that long every time, but Paul was there, and it's a special event. And so he's preaching till midnight. But I realize I have 52 weeks. Well, I usually get a couple weeks off. So 50 weeks out of the year, I preach about 30 minutes, which is about 25 hours. If I do it twice, which I don't really do it twice a month, so, half the month is taken up with other people doing it or potluck, things like this. But let's suppose we double that. So I've got 50 hours in an entire year to preach everything that we need to hear in the church. I'm going to miss some stuff. What I'm asking you to do is, I've asked several times, and I think some people didn't think I was serious about it, but I've been preaching, and when I do the sermons that other people request, I try to remember to tell you, this is requested. If you have anything you want me to preach about, a topic, an idea, whatever, a passage, let me know, and I'll make sure that I put it on the schedule. So when I say that I'm going to do these things, it doesn't mean it's inflexible. I want to preach what you need, and if you need to hear some things from God's Word, then let me know, and I'll be glad to do it. I think that's only a right thing to do. But we do have a limited amount of time, don't we? Together. We want to make the most of it. Well, we're going to look at evangelism. Matthew chapter 28, Jesus tells us to go make disciples of all the nations. He's telling us that we need to go and make disciples in all the world. And when he tells us to do that, he gives us two not alternative ways. It's not take your pick. It's both of these things relate to how you become a disciple. Baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all things I've commanded you. And he says, and lo, I'll be with you always until the end of the earth, or end of the age. That's exactly what we are supposed to be doing. But if you notice in that, the idea of evangelism is not just going and teaching and baptizing people. It's afterward teaching them everything that relates to the gospel. So what is going on here is I'm evangelizing. I'm teaching because this is what's supposed to continue on. And whether we are, there's some people who have in this audience who have been Christians longer than I've been alive. There's some people in the audience who've been a long time Christian who probably don't need a whole lot from me, but we still grow. We still challenge each other and try to help in the process. And then we also have new Christians, babes, who are, we know, very new. They struggle. They don't understand what's really important yet. They don't understand a lot of things. And we've got to figure out a way to reach them where they are. And so I'm trying my best to reach everyone at every stage, but that's just not going to be possible every time. But in evangelism, we need to make sure we are looking for the opportunities. And we're going to hopefully, Lord willing, increase our opportunities to do that next year. The beginning of this year, or the end of last year, I messaged the elders and I asked them, if they would give me a year. They were wanting to shift gears, and I said, give me a year. I've been trying to do something since I got here, and COVID got in the way, and all kinds of things happened. But they said, okay, take this year, do the things that you're trying to accomplish, and let's see what happens. And I've been doing behind the scenes for several years, but I really started implementing things a lot this year. And we've started seeing growth. We've started seeing things happen. And it's not because of me, but the message is getting out. And a lot of you are doing a lot of good things. But in the way that we're approaching it, it's not a quick thing. It's a slow process. We're getting into people's lives and helping them learn more and more about God, so that they can make the right decisions that are based upon knowledge and based upon faith, and not based upon an emotional appeal or a pressure situation where we get them and say, got to do it right now. I still will try to convince people to do it right now, but we still also need to be careful how we do that. What are we doing? We're planting seeds. I've used that illustration a lot because Jesus used the illustration. If you think about the parable of the sower, it's interesting that he calls that the parable of the sower and he doesn't call it the parable of the soil. But we focus only on the soil and not the sower. But the sower is the one who's going to also, there's some kind of involvement with the soil where you can help prepare the soil for receiving the seed in the best way, which is exactly what I've been trying to teach and to help us and encourage us to do these kinds of things. And in doing that, then, we're going to hopefully increase opportunities, and I hope that you can get on board with that. I think that I've proven, at least for my own sake, I've proven that this is possible, that it works, that we're getting into people's lives, and that we can have more and more people coming as a result. We're going to add a few more activities. Lord willing, it'll be three more activities. Of course, we've got the thing going at the creamery. Well, it's not called the creamery anymore. Rolling Beans. Still can't get used to saying that. We're growing we're helping to reach into the community. And my plans for next year is to increase that, to improve that, so we have more and more people coming to it, Lord willing. And in order to support that, I'm going to have a Facebook group that will be designed for, if you can't be there, you can at least get some things. And that actually is a small group that's been there for a long time, but we're going to add to it. And so this is my commitment of weekly and as much as I can daily, getting into the group and getting into the people's lives who come to the creamery, to have discussions with them, to build those relationships, to encourage them, to encourage other people to come along, encourage you to be a part of it as well, because we can do a lot of good things, and it doesn't have to remain there. Of course, Don's work that he's doing over in the senior center, and that's a lot of good things. They're planting a lot of seeds. There are people who are growing, who are learning, and I know it's just a matter of time, but sometimes that time takes a long time, right? It always takes longer than you think it's going to, or you think it should. But we're going to add some other things. So we have another example is I send text messages out to people 5 days a week. A lot of y'all are actually on the list. And they're just meant for encouragement. I'm changing it up a little bit next year. I'm going to have 3 days for encouragement, 2 days for leadership with biblical principles, and 2 days for marriage development, helping, just tips for marriage from the Bible. And I'm getting people signed up for those right now, and that'll begin in January. And this last year, I sent out over 30,000 texts. I don't know how many I sent. Sent out over 30,000, though, I know. And that has been a wonderful thing. It at least has for me. The feedback that I'm getting is really great. In fact, it's strange because most of the feedback I get are the people who are closest to me, which is amazing. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from people who are not Christians who are asking questions, or they're just responding saying, I appreciate that, or whatever it is. And like I said, I'm not bragging about this, but I'm letting you know what's happening. And that's not even a focused group. It's a group of I just put out a list and said on Facebook, I put out a post and said, hey, if you want to be encouraged from the Bible, just give me your phone number. And that's how it started. And so this morning, I sent out 175 text messages to people. It's not much, but it's something, and I'm getting into their lives. And Lord willing, we'll have other things coming up this next year where you can be a part of. If you came to the evangelism seminar that we just had, the forum that we had last time, we're having another one in January again, by the way, is one of the things I talked about is the fact that that's not even my strength. It's not where my strengths lie. I'm learning how to do it, but my strength is not really encouragement. There are a lot of people who are a lot better encourager than I am. Why aren't y'all doing it then? Well, the idea is next year I'm hoping to encourage you to be a part of either that or something else where you can use your talents and skills to serve others, to show love of God. And the whole reason, of course, is because we're trying to get into their lives and get them to know us and get to know them. And, I'm getting to know people in this way. And like I said before, this is not my forte. This is not where my strength lies. My strength is not in dealing with a lot of people. But imagine when someone who can deal with lots of people does, and he can help us to do it. Well, we're trying to get to know as many people as possible. That's the idea. That's the only reason we're going to do anything, is because we're trying to show love, to get to know people, to get into their lives, and also for people to get to know us. Now, there's a difference between an activity and an event. For me, the activities are the day-to-day things. These are the things that I do regularly, that we should be involved in regularly, whether it's once a month or once a week or whatever it is that we're going to do. Examples of that for the activities ideas, we have a possibility of probably going to start an English teaching opportunity class for people who speak Spanish, who want to improve their English. Are we going to convert people that way? Probably not by teaching them English, but when we get to know them, we can sit down and ask them questions like, hey, where do you go to church? What do you know about God? And we'll be able to enter into their lives and build trust as a result of that. That's just one example of the three that could be going. And so my goal is, hopefully, by the end of the next year, we'll have several opportunities for us to get involved. But the thing is that it's going to require us doing it and not me doing it, because I'm pretty well booked right now. But if you want to get involved, it's going to be something that's based on your talent and your strength, as I mentioned so many times, that God has put you in this place at this time for a reason, and we need to make sure we know what that is and try our best to live it out. And I realize we don't even know sometimes what we should be doing. And I'm not suggesting that God has it all mapped out for us, but He has given you strengths, right? He has given you abilities. In fact, look over in Romans chapter 12, and I realize that this is related to spiritual gifts and as in the miraculous, but look at what he says in verse 3. He says, "For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who's among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith." Now, listen what he said. He says that we should not think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but to think soberly. When he said, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought, he didn't mean think of yourself as low as you can. That's not what he meant. He said, think soberly. That is, to recognize truth and reality. As I mentioned that this morning, we're talking about accepting who you are and where you are and what God has done for you and put into your heart, into your lives. You have abilities to do things that I can't, and vice versa. We're all that way. And the person who says they can't do anything needs to read the parable of the talents, because even the one talent man could do something. And we all are trying our best. I'm not suggesting that no one is doing anything, but what happened when the man with the 5 talents used his talents? Are we really using the ones that we've been given? What about the new opportunities? And they're there. We can manage ourselves to the point where we can do it without killing ourselves, without burning ourselves out, but we can still do it. And here's the thing, when you're doing something that's your strength, that you enjoy doing, that's your love and passion because you're serving God, it's a whole lot easier to do it without burnout. Burnout things that you don't want to do, and the stress level is really high. Maybe it's because it's not your forte, it's not your strength, and so you get tired of it. But when you're doing things that you're good at, you enjoy that. Well, the question is, how do we use the things that God has given to us to glorify God? He says in verse 4, as we have many members in one body, but all the members do not have the same function. So we, being many, are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. Our ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches in teaching, exhorts in exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. And I want to suggest that these are just a small portion of what we can actually do, different talents and abilities that we have. And no, we don't have to have the miraculous gifts from God to have the ability to do these things. The only exception to that might be prophecy, and you can, in a sense, say that prophecy is speaking forth God's word, so therefore it's speaking God's word, it's preaching. I don't like to call it that. I just call it preaching. But if you even if you took that one out, all the other ones can be explained without the miraculous. Where do you fit? Well, that's why we have these activities. Day by day by day, or week by week, whatever it is we do. We also have events. You know, we have 2 different booths. These things are, they're like a gold mine waiting to be plumbed. It's like we're trying to, we have something that's so potentially good if we just figure out what we can do with it. So every time we have a group, every time we have a booth, we try something new. And this last time we started offering, offering something to children. You just sign up for this monthly fun page, and it's a little Bible lesson with a color page and a word search, and now 40 something. Some of them are our own children, but a lot of them were people in the community that walked by and said, hey, I kind of like that idea. And guess what? Every kid that signed up, even if there's 5 in a family, all 5 of them get something from us. You think that makes an impact on parents? Of course it does. Do you think that when we start later on, we start adding to that people are going to start paying attention and start participating? Absolutely they will. Not everyone, but they will. So what do? We build on that, right? It may be that the booth, when you come and be a part of it, you may have an idea that is something that's revolutionary, that in a sense people in the community it'll explode, and it'll just be something that everyone wants to be a part of. That's the idea. It's not likely to happen, to be honest, but we make progress where we can, right? And sometimes that's just a few people at a time. When I started the texting thing, I think there were 30 people on it. And I've never had a day where I had more than 2 or 3 people sign up, and most of the time I don't even have a week. A week may go by without anybody signing up. But after 2 years of it, I've built up to the 174, whatever it is. You know, in the next year, my plan is to be at about 250 to 300, because it's a little bit at a time. And I've noticed this. People congregations will have huge numbers of baptisms. And there's usually a couple reasons for that. One, it could be that somebody finally come in and went out and talked to people they should have been talking to all along, but they've been afraid to, so they didn't. Just why not? These people are the low-hanging fruit, right? And so we have great celebration and rejoicing. That usually, if that happens, it doesn't happen again. It doesn't happen very often, because we kind of pick all the low-hanging fruit, and then we sit around, not to be rude, but we sit around twiddling our thumbs waiting for those low-hanging fruit to come again. Or we can be the kind of people who are proactively planting seed for year after year after year after year until we start having a harvest. And when you do it that way, when you have the harvest, it's not just the low-hanging fruit, because the next year you're going to have harvest from previous years. It builds on itself. That's the whole plan. That's the whole idea from the very beginning, what we've been trying to accomplish. It's not just trying to go out and find somebody real quick. It's in that growth in their own hearts so that when we do have the opportunities, they're going to be ready for us. And when they're ready, we can be right there waiting on them because we're already in their lives. That's the idea. But we do have these little events like the 2 different booths that we can use to actually produce more activities. And people get to know us. We have advertisements that we put out. For example, we have an advertisement on one of the tables in one of the restaurants. We bought an ad on the table. All of their tables have our code, and you can scan the code and see about us. Incidentally, we're the only church that's on any of the tables. We have the website. We have other things, great opportunities where people can get involved and help to expand it. I've just got bare bones things going, but they can be really fleshed out by people who are interested. And so we're going to do the same things we've been doing and more. And the more is going to be from your ideas, from your strengths, from the things that you think of that you want to participate in. And none of us are exempt from the idea of the fact that we can have an idea. None of us are exempt. None of us are too low in the brotherhood, whatever that means, to think that we can't have suggestion. Just because we think of it doesn't mean we're going to do it. It's pretty obvious. But you know what? If we don't have ideas, what are we going to do? I don't know. I guess I can go preach on the street corner. We were eating lunch today, and somebody started doing that. We're eating outside at Rodeo Goat, and a guy, I don't know, he's probably 50 feet away, he just started preaching. And everybody turned around, several people turned around and looked at me like, what are you going to do? Or what do you think of that? And I was annoyed, to be honest. I was trying to eat and have a conversation, and I couldn't hear because the guy yelling scriptures at me. Well, I'm just trying to run that person down. I mean, you can go to Walmart and stand in the aisle for cereal and start preaching to people, or you can actually get into their lives and start making a difference. And that's what we're trying to do. So that's the idea for next year for evangelism. Bible classes. I'm excited about the Bible class situation. So we don't have any kids yet. Yeah, we have some, and we're going to be growing that. That's something we're going to be working on. But we also have classes in here. My hope is that next year we'll have an opportunity or a need to have another adult class. Wouldn't that be interesting? And I'm kind of preaching to the choir here a little bit, but you know, if we're going to have Bible classes, it helps if people come to the Bible classes. But so it may not be the case that we have more than one, but it would be interesting if we did. We could do it based on age or whatever. But the elders have said that they want us to read through the whole Bible next year. I love that idea. And we're going to be putting in the calendar, in the bulletin, a chronological list to go through the Bible in order of as well as we can tell, of order of the events that happened. So in the middle, the first, I think after Genesis chapter 10 or 11, we get into Job. For moving around in the Bible, but it'll be a different experience. We're going to have that printed out for you to have. We'll also have ribbons where you can, for the month where you're reading, you can have one side it'll say the chronological, and the other side it'll say the normal, just going Genesis all the way through in order. So you can choose which one you want to do. But based on that, what did I do? Based on that, I thought we can have classes that are based on the readings. So our Sunday morning class next year will begin going over the materials that we read the previous week. That means when you come to class, you have already read the material. You already understand pretty much what's going to happen. And in fact, my hope, my plan, is that you're going to have questions every day to go through if you want to, so that you can have you can read through the passage, and then you can go through 2 or 3 questions that will help cement the main points and the main ideas there. And then when you come to Bible class, You already have a lot of the answers and a lot of the discussion. We already have a really good discussion, but it's going to be even better when we're advanced, when we actually know what class is going to be about. Because half the time you come in here, you're not sure where we are. That's my fault. So I'm going to try to help that this next year, and also have community discussions related to Bible readings. One of the projects that I've been trying to figure out how to do was what I call a Bible literacy program, where we encourage people just to read the Bible. Do you know how many people actually read the Bible nowadays? Very, very few. In fact, most people who claim to be Christians don't read the Bible at all. They hardly ever open this book. Oh, they'll tell you that, yeah, they know the Bible. If you ask them to tell you, just say, hey, tell me about the Bible. You don't get many answers. There's not a whole lot of information that people have. So one of the things we're going to be trying to do is encourage people to read the Bible, and that could relate. I haven't figured this out yet. If you have ideas, let me know. But we can have discussions in the community based on different readings of the Bible. And it doesn't have to be our pace, but it can be something about the Bible. There's something there for all of us to participate in, that we can help encourage each other, be all on the same page, and do these things. Actually, we can build excitement with that. If people are excited about Bible class, they'll come. Now and then, Carla has to remind me, because I take it personally, and I shouldn't, but I take it personally a lot when I try and encourage people to come to church and they just don't come. You ever been there? I'm not mad at them over it. It hurts. And I'll second guess, what if I did this? What if I said that? And she'll just, every now and then, she'll just look at me and say, Jason, if they want to be here, they'll be here. It's true. My goal is to help you want to be here. That's what I want. And I'm preaching to the choir. I know that. You're here, right? But we ought to be looking around at the people who are not here and saying, what can we do to help encourage them so they would want to be here? Because nobody does something they don't want to do. I just guaranteed. You can browbeat, you can coerce, you can threaten, you can scare. That lasts for a few months, maybe. But if you have them committed and devoted to being here, there's nothing that's going to stop them, or very little that will. My prayer is that we all grow next year, because God expects that from us. He deserves that from us. And we have the opportunity to do that. And the opportunity hasn't changed. When I first came here, one of the reasons I came was because be exploding. And I didn't mean the building. I meant the people around. Our population, since we've been here, has probably tripled or close to it. It's going to get more. This is not stopping. And I said this when I first came. Within the first few months, I said this. And I don't mean to be a prophet or an I told you so person, but listen to this. Just because the community is growing does not mean that we're going to grow. It does not mean that. The only way Christ Church is going to grow in Caddo Mills is if the Christians in Caddo Mills does Christ's work. That's the only way it can happen. It's not short-term projects that's going to do it. It's not coercion. It's not, sending everyone in the community a Bible and asking them to read. It is getting into the lives of other people like Jesus did. I asked the question one time to myself. It scared me, the answer. Think about it. If Jesus was to go into Mills and be a preacher and be in people's lives, what would he do? Where would he be? And the only answer that I can come up with is that he wouldn't be in my office where I am a lot of the times. He'd be in their homes. How do I know that? You look through the scriptures, and Jesus was always at somebody's house. And I realize that we're not Jesus, that we don't have that kind of situation. But all of us can get involved in the lives of someone. And when we do, we will make a difference. There's no way around that. We will make a difference. So the question is we going to be a participant? Are we going to do it? And we can. I know we can. And we've seen a lot of good things this last year, the last several years. I've been here 4 years now, and I've loved every minute of it. And I've seen some incredible things happen in this congregation. And I know that the best is yet to come. I see it. It's there. And we just need to believe that God is going to be with us, and we'll be there. So this next year will be another step. That's all it is. It's just a step. But it's a step that is going to be in accordance with what God wants for us. And I want to help you do that. I'm really excited not only for what I'm going to do next year, I'm excited for what you're going to accomplish next year. And I mean that sincerely, because you just don't know the potential that you have, I think. This lesson is not really about sin, but if you have sin in your life, we need to make things right. If you are not a Christian, I think everyone in here is. If you're not and you need to be baptized for the remission of your sins, we're here for you. We're going to help you with that. Or if you are a Christian and you haven't been living the way God wants you to live, make some changes. We need to be ready for next year. We hit the ground running, and we can do everything that we can to bring glory and honor to God, because He deserves it. If there's anything we can do to help you, please come as we stand and sing.